Denver Broncos head coach Sean Payton fired off some shots at former head coach Nathaniel Hackett for 2022's dysfunction, and he put his backing behind Russell Wilson. We break down day 2 of Denver Broncos training camp and much more on a spicy new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Welcome into a brand new episode, Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to everybody in Broncos Country for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day every single day for all your up-to-date Broncos news, content, coverage, analysis, and more. Shout out to all the everyday listeners out there in Broncos Country. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you're never left in the dark as to what's going on with the Denver Broncos, and you get it from an objective point of view. A spicy morning on Thursday in Dove Valley with a big-time piece that had dropped with Sean Payton giving his thoughts, his real thoughts on what had happened last season with the Broncos. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports, joined alongside, as always, by my co-host, Sayre Bedinger, site expert, predominantlyorange.com. Day 2 of Denver Broncos training camp at the Centura Health Training Center on Thursday. Going through and watching it, right, the ramp-up period continues, but really the story of the day on Thursday was the news as to what had happened when Sean Payton sat down one-on-one with Jarrett Bell of USA Today and published a very, very notable piece and shared his thoughts on the dysfunction that was the 2022 NFL season last year. It was he didn't pull no punches here, to say the least.
He really didn't, Cody, and he started it off emphatically, right? Talking about playoffs, like he's going to be, upset if the team doesn't make the playoffs this year, which I think was a great way to start the article and kind of set the tone for what felt like something that was completely off the record. To me, it's like if you were to say, hey, let's go behind closed doors and just really have a real conversation, this is what Sean Payton would say. Like, it's such a change of course from what we've heard all offseason, isn't it? Like the Broncos they didn't even have their big name free agents have press conferences. Like it has been very much so Sean Payton dictating the story, which really indicates to me that there's something very intentional about the timing of this, about the way he's going about it, and the things that he said. It's a scathing review, and I think we got a little bit of a preview. Remember back in January when interim coach Jerry Rosburg took over the team, and he started to make all these little changes, and he kind of started to take these subtle little jabs at the way things had been going under Nathaniel Hackett. Now, all of a sudden, it's like Pandora's box has been opened up to all the things that people maybe wanted to say, didn't feel like they were at liberty to say, maybe they wanted to say, but they just, they weren't quite convicted that they were right. Who knows? But Sean Payton came out, Cody, like you said, spicy, guns blazing. These are some serious gut checks, and it really is one of the most scathing, honest, just brutal reviews of last season that I've heard to this point.
And I think a lot of it, too, for me is, I was kind of taken back by it a little bit. I was like, was this an off-the-record conversation, as you mentioned? Was this something that was off the record that just got publicized in a sense? Because you don't usually hear coaches come out with this type of fire here. But I think there was a clear intention behind what Sean Payton was doing. And look, I want to talk about the Nathaniel Hackett era. Once Hackett was hired by the New York Jets to be their offensive coordinator, the New York media created a narrative that it was all Russell Wilson, that it wasn't Nathaniel Hackett's fault for what had happened there, which is odd because New York, as we know, is generally a very, very tough media market. And I think this is Sean Payton putting his foot down because, look, the national narrative all offseason long has been Russell Wilson. What's wrong with him? Is he broken? And I think he did a really, really good point of going through, and I'm going to read it quote for quote here, and really kind of defending Russ in a sense by saying, hey, it wasn't all just Russell Wilson. And here's what he had said to Jarrett Bell. He said, there's so much dirt around that, talking about the coaching, what happened on the offensive side of the ball last year. There's 20 dirty hands for what was allowed, tolerated in the freaking training rooms, the meeting rooms, the offense. I don't know Hackett. A lot of people had dirt on their hands. It wasn't just Russell. He didn't just flip. He still has it. This BS that he hit a wall, shoot, they couldn't get a play in. They were 29th in the league in pre-snap penalties on both sides of the ball. So he's looking at it, and we've heard Hackett really kind of go through. And I don't know, Hackett's kind of had some grace about his time in Denver. Obviously, he said, hey, I moved on from it. But for Payton, it's like, hey, this narrative has been painted about Russell Wilson, a lot of it coming from the Hackett camp and the New York media, that he was the issue there. There's blame, as you and I think have discussed here on the show. There's equal blame to go around, and Payton coming in and defending his quarterback, I think, is a very, very big part of that. You need to have that. And it also sets the tone, in my opinion, Sayre. Sean Payton is going to go to bat for his guys 110%. He kind of reiterated that to ESPN's Diana Rossini, that he's defending his players, and rightfully so. Sean Payton has Russell Wilson's back, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here, because now the pressure is on Russell Wilson to perform.
It is, and I think a lot of the pressure too is going to be on Sean Payton for saying a lot of the things that he said. Like he really came out, and this scathing review that he gave of last season now puts the pressure back on him to say, like, look, get off of Russ's back. Fix your eyes right here, because watch what I'm about to do. Like, that's the kind of attitude that I kind of get from it. And I love what he said. He wasn't shy about throwing anybody under the bus. Like, I love this quote that he brought in here. It says, it doesn't happen often where an NFL team or organization gets embarrassed. Remember, we've been hearing a lot about the ownership group, the new ownership group being so embarrassed last year. And even, I believe even Greg Penner had said something like that. Forgive me if I'm putting words in his mouth. Right after the firing of Hackett, he talked about that Christmas Day game being an embarrassing event for their franchise. And it led to ultimately them having to fire Hackett. And he said it's not often an NFL team or organization gets embarrassed. And that happened here. Part of it was their own fault relative to spending so much bleeping time trying to win the offseason, the PR, the pomp and circumstance, marching people around, and all this stuff. We're not doing any of that. And I love that he said that, Cody, because look, the Broncos were trying to win the offseason last year, right? Because they were transitioning to a new ownership group. You're bringing in a new quarterback. You're trying to erase this bad taste that's been in everybody's mouth since Super Bowl 50. So I understand you want people to be positive about the team, but really the Broncos became the butt of every joke because of that last year. It was embarrassing for all of us, wasn't it? Not just fans of the team, not just the people who own the team, but people even who cover the team. It's like, what are we supposed to say to justify what's happening? This is the worst offense arguably in league history. I'm glad he came out and said that, but man, he really dug deep at the coaching staff last year with one of these final quotes that he had.
Yeah, and he said it might have been one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. That's how bad it was. Sayre, for me, look, I appreciate the honesty that Sean Payton has. Like, I've been around some really good coaches in my time, and the really good coaches are the ones who are brutally honest. And ideally, yeah, I think in the eyes of the NFL, there's like a code. You never bash the coach who was here before you. But I think a lot of it was Payton has been visibly frustrated with just some of the narratives that have been created about this team. And I'm glad that he fired back a little bit. Obviously, it's going to lead to more, I would say, discussion when week 5 comes around, when the New York Jets come to town to take on the Denver Broncos. Nathaniel Hackett calling plays against his former team with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I mean, the storyline will be very massive that week. It'll be under the microscope here. But Sean Payton going to bat for Russell Wilson, going to bat for his team. And look, hey, players, they're behind him as well, which is a big sign going forward. And Broncos Country, day 2 of Broncos camp was in the books on Thursday at the Centura Health Training Center. What stood out? And also, Javonte Williams took some time to meet with the media, expressing he's gaining more confidence day by day as he makes the return from ACL surgery. You'll get that and much more on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week, going with Justin Fields here at the quarterback position. When the top tier of quarterbacks is off the board in fantasy football drafts in 2023, there's another line of luxury passers and runners who are guaranteed to fit your starting lineups every single week. One of them is the Bears' Justin Fields, who started rolling out of the garage last season and is bound to jump into the fast lane this upcoming season. This time, on top of his huge rushing total, Fields can deliver improved stats in the air with DJ Moore now leading Chicago's wide receiver corps this upcoming season. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship, and eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, tail lights, alternators, struts, shocks, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car and your vehicle, because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up, because now you know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go with eBay Guaranteed Fit. Everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Javonte Williams is ready to throw his shoulder back into some defensive players again. And hey, maybe there's another sleeper at the running back position showing some things early on at Denver Broncos training camp. And we're going to talk a lot about the running back position as well as some of Cody's other observations from day 2 at camp. But before we do, huge shout out to every single one of you that listens to Locked On Broncos every single day, wherever you listen to podcasts, however you listen to them. Thank you for making us part of your day every single day, as well as those of you who watch on YouTube. And if you're subscribed, a huge mile high salute to you as well. We crossed that 10,000 subscriber barrier the other day. And man, Cody, what an achievement. What a milestone, not just for us, but for everybody who's part of this Locked On Broncos community. Huge shout out to every single one of you, especially the everydayers. We love and appreciate you. And we're excited to be able to talk about these running backs, especially Javonte Williams, getting to see him meet the media, hear him talk about his recovery process a little bit, Cody. Not only has he been in a recovery process, but this guy is bordering on unprecedented recovery timeline, like Adrian Peterson level recovery. Javonte was back out there at practice. Obviously, we heard about that, but it's more so than just that. He's actually been cleared for physical contact, which is big.
Yeah, that's a big sign forward for Javonte Williams. And let's just talk about maybe what Javonte did during practice on Thursday at the Centura Health Training Center. I saw a little bit more of Javonte. Not only is he doing individual drills, right, his position-specific drills, but Javonte was doing some things in 7-on-7. He was doing some things in team drills. And I'll tell you this, like the one thing I'm looking at when Javonte's out there is when he's going through his initial step, right, his first step to being able to get the ball, whether he's going to fake it or go out for a route, is what does he look like? Is there any pause? Is there any hesitancy with Javonte and his footwork? There's not. I mean, Sayre, there were moments where I was watching him, he would get a carry, he would make a stutter step as the hole would close and he was waiting for something to open up, and then he would fit through, get skinny, and make a couple of bouncy steps to get outside and to keep running. You love to see that. And he even said it in his post-practice press conference as well. He forgets about it. And we asked him a question is, when did that moment come where you step out on the field and you do forget about it? And he had said yesterday, so initially Wednesday's practice at the Centura Health Training Center, he said, I just put my helmet on, went out there for a play. And it's like you forget in that moment. That's a great sign. Sayre, somebody who's been through ACL surgery, trying to return to play, the return to play protocol, it's tough for athletes to get over that hurdle. And while there are some things that Javonte said, he still thinks about mentally, he's in a good spot. And so that kind of leads us into the next point. I had a chance to ask Javonte about, for him, what's it like for him? How has it been being able to get a carry and have linemen around you, offensive linemen, defensive linemen? You have linebackers that are running up full speed to fill their run lanes. What has that been like? And for Javonte Williams, one thing he said is that it's a little bit of a mental process, but it feels good. He's getting his confidence back bit by bit.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest part of all this right now is just mental. And just getting out there, seeing the holes again, running through, like you said, the O-line, D-line, things like that. It's a huge confidence boost.
He's good. He looks good, man. He really does. And man, just to hear that he's confident, like that should get Broncos fans excited. That should get fantasy football managers that might be watching the show to find out, hey, let me hear about Javonte, right? He might be one of your big contributors this season. I can't wait for more of this, because we talked all offseason with a little bit of just like a tethered excitement about Javonte Williams. Like, well, maybe he could get back to form at some point this season, but we should keep expectations tempered. Now it's kind of just like, hey, Javonte's back, which I think obviously we still got to take it one day at a time, but still the progress is bordering on alarming. So I'm super, super excited about that. And obviously Javonte is not the only player out at Broncos training camp already making some waves. I know they're calling these, what are they calling these? Like acclimation practices or something like that, Cody, but fans are going to be able to go see the players on Friday, 3,000, up to 3,000 fans, as a matter of fact. What should they be expecting based on this day 2? What did you see out there besides Javonte Williams out there practicing with the first team?
Yeah, I mean, there's some other things too, especially regarding Javonte. And I think one other thing that we should definitely talk about, he was asked a question is, when do you feel like you're going to be ready to be, full go? Like in Javonte's mind, he's ready, but here's what he had to say about, will he be fully ready to do some things? Here is what he had to say during Thursday's practice.
I think that's up to the doctors and the Broncos, but I feel like it is what it is.
It is what it is. And for him, obviously, the final decision will come through between, Bo Lowry, the training staff, Sean Payton. They're going to collaborate and say, okay, what can he do? What do we want him to do? Javonte feels ready to go, and he even expressed it as well that he can't wait to lower his shoulder for the first time when there is physical contact. So that is something for Broncos fans to keep an eye on. But let's go into some of the details about day 2 of this acclimation period leading up to Friday's practice in front of 3,000 fans at the Broncos practice facility. I think it's worth highlighting, hey, when watching Patrick Surtain during Thursday's practice, he looks still every bit the part. And what did we see last year? We saw training camp battles in the air between he and Courtland Sutton. He had a tremendous breakup in coverage today going across the middle where Courtland was at. Got his hand on the hip, got his ball side hand across, knocked it away, incomplete. You love to see that. But also at the same time, you saw decisiveness from the quarterbacks, Sayre, not just Russell Wilson, but Jarrett Stidham, Ben DiNucci. These guys were getting the ball out of their hands quickly. They weren't allowing any type of pass rush or pressure to try to impact them. It was quick, decisive, and that is a theme we have seen so far with the Broncos offense with Sean Payton. That operation on that side of things was really sweet. And you and I have been talking about who is an undrafted guy that Broncos fans need to keep an eye on. Jaleel McLaughlin, once again, I was standing next to Andrew Mason. We were watching them during 7-on-7 during team period specifically. And Jaleel McLaughlin had this play. We talk about footwork. We talk about the ability to turn and pivot. His vision is very, very good. And his speed, as Andrew Mason was telling me, he's got things that you can't coach. And I'm excited for Broncos fans to be able to see that. But those are some of the highlights here from Broncos camp, day 2 of the acclimation period. Obviously, Friday's practice will be a big one. Saturdays will be a really big one as well, as it is the back-together weekend here at the Centura Health Training Center, where Broncos brass is expected to address the crowd. There's going to be a bunch of events going on. If you're going to be out there at practice, let me know. I'd love to say hi to anybody that is in attendance. But we also heard from Broncos defensive lineman DJ Jones. He shared his thoughts on new addition Zach Allen, what he thinks about the core of the Broncos defensive line, and he gave some praise to several members of the Broncos offensive line, including a new addition as well. We'll highlight that, and you'll get that on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Real quick, Broncos Country, you make Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. Well, for your second listen, we always encourage you to go check out the Locked On NFL podcast, the biggest stories, local experts covering what's going on. And really a big talking point right now is during Thursday's practice in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow came up and was carted off the field. In Miami, Jalen Ramsey was carted off the field as well. What's the latest on what's going on out there? Well, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, where you're going to get the local experts on the biggest stories around training camp. Make sure you check it out for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. DJ Jones was a key offseason acquisition just 2 years ago for the Denver Broncos in NFL free agency. And there's a little bit of a different vibe. There's a little bit of a different tone to him coming into this upcoming season. We've already talked about Sean Payton, the impact he has. DJ Jones respects and appreciates that, and dove a little bit deeper into some of these conversations after Thursday's practice. Real quick, just want to say thank you so much to everybody in Broncos country for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day every single day. You can get us on YouTube. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube, you comment on the video, interact with other members of Broncos country. Do us a favor, like that video as well. It pushes it out to the algorithm so more members of Broncos country can find us every single day all year long. Or you can also get us free and available everywhere you get your podcasts. Sayre, let's open up the table here a little bit. DJ Jones, last year, I feel like coming in initially, he was one of the big free agency signings in last year's free agency cycle. And I think the question we all had is, what type of impact will he have? He's very good against the run. He can also rush the quarterback from the interior, which is a very, very beneficial thing to have. He dealt with some injuries last year. He only missed 2 games, but he played banged up quite a bit, but he was an impact player for them last year. He raved about a new addition to the team in Zach Allen, and he had a lot of great things to say about him. So if you missed it, Broncos country, here's what DJ Jones had to say, and Sayre, open for what you think about what he had to say as well.
He can play everywhere. I love playing with him. It's twitchy, kind of similar to myself, similar to some players we had, but I think we play well together. We'll complement each other very well.
It's exciting to hear, isn't it? Because DJ Jones obviously going to be taking on a pretty massive expanded role this year. Not necessarily, especially because of Ioma Uwazurike, but obviously you lose Uwazurike to suspension. Draymond Jones left in free agency. Now you bring in a guy like Zach Allen, who, like he said, he's twitchy. He's one of those guys that I think got one of the pressure player label from Sean Payton as well. So DJ Jones going to have to play an expanded role, not just as a leader on the team, but in the pass rush department. I know that was not really his overall game at San Francisco, really big on tackles for loss, really big on playing the run. We saw that, but man, he is going to be counted on this year to collapse that pocket a little bit more along with Zach Allen. And I found it interesting, Cody, too. He talked about Mike Purcell, and Mike Purcell obviously starting camp on the non-football injury list. We know that really that's not that big of an issue long term. It kind of feels like those guys can come off at any point, and hopefully Mike will be back soon. And he talked about the importance as well of what Purcell brings to the table just in terms of making them better.
To me, Mike is the core. Mike is a dominant nose, immovable, and he'll allow myself to play 3, Zach to play 4, and other guys to roll in. So, yeah, I can't wait to get him back.
Can't wait for Mike Purcell to return there. And he was on the side field here once again for the Broncos alongside Marvin Mims, Alex Forsyth, Kendall Hinton, as those guys were getting some work there. And we're not currently sure when Purcell will return. Obviously, he had an offseason procedure. We don't know exactly what it was, but I think he makes a great point. You talk about a core guy. We've highlighted it here on the show, especially in our defensive line preview. Mike Purcell is a guy that I feel like, in the eyes of a lot of Broncos fans on Twitter, you see a lot of criticism about him, which is weird to me because when you watch the tape, he is an anchor. He is a force. He's not going to be a pass rusher, but he's going to be a guy that you're not going to run in his gap. He is physically dominant. And one thing that DJ Jones had said, especially, is he opens things up for maybe Zach Allen to do some different things, different techniques, DJ to play a different technique because of the commanding presence that he has there. And it opens up things on the outside for the outside linebackers, and then allows other guys to do things, whether you're blitzing the inside linebacker. I think that was super important for him to highlight there. But DJ is a guy that I feel like this year specifically coming back, I think, is big with Marcus Dixon. Marcus Dixon's all about energy. And that's one thing that DJ Jones highlighted in his post-practice press conferences. This is a coach that, we need that as players in the NFL, as defensive linemen. We need that energy. Marcus Dixon provides that. He also shouted some praise as well about the Broncos' interior offensive linemen, as we all know it. New additions to the room, including Ben Powers, Mike McGlinchey. But in terms of the guard center combination, those 3 guys there, he had a lot of great things to say about them. Here's what he had to say.
Those 3 will play very well together. You got 2 big guys, and you got Kush with the speed, intelligence. I'm excited to see what they do to D-lines.
That could be one of the most upgraded areas on the team, right? That interior offensive line. And that's going to make those defensive linemen that much better, especially with young players, Cody, coming alongside DJ Jones and Zach Allen. I think being able to go up against the likes of Ben Powers, Quinn Miners, and even Lloyd Cushenberry. Look, there's a lot of expectations going to be heaped on that unit when you pay Ben Powers like you do, Quinn Miners is obviously expected to get a big contract here soon, and Lloyd Cushenberry in a make or break year. That's going to make that defensive line that much better every single day at training camp. So I'm glad he brought that up. I'm glad he brought a little bit of a scouting. He did a little bit of a scouting session of the guys that he plays alongside, the guys that he goes up against. DJ Jones is very sharp. He's very consistent. And to me, he's kind of one of the more underrated guys. I know he's pretty highly paid as far as players on the Broncos roster goes, but he's really underrated, in my opinion, in terms of what he brings to the table consistently. And he did that in San Francisco as well. He's a hard worker. I think it's great that the Broncos brought him out on day 2 of camp. It shows what they think of him as a leader in that locker room and as somebody that they're putting a lot of expectations on as well.
The Broncos defense will need to find a way to generate more pressure on the interior. And I think the combination of pieces that they have there, if these guys can stay healthy, I think they might have something special on their hands in that department where we might see more internal pressure versus it just being solely relied on from the outside linebackers. Denver needs that. You need that in today's NFL, especially against these passing offenses. Pressure cannot just come from your outside linebackers or blitzing a nickel every once in a while. You have to get it consistently from your interior players. And I remember watching film several times last year where DJ Jones is attacking, shooting a gap. He's creating pressure pockets there for the quarterback and to make it a little more difficult for him to have a clean pocket to get throws off. Denver has to do that. They have to find a way to do that against guys like Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, who just got a mega contract extension. Denver's going to play some really good quarterbacks once again here, including we talk about Josh Allen, that Week 10 Monday Night Football game. They're going to play Aaron Rodgers. You have to find a way to disrupt the flow that these guys can find themselves getting into that make them some of the league's top and most dangerous passers in the NFL. Can DJ Jones help contribute? That is the biggest hope here for the Broncos coming into 2023. But with that said, Broncos Country, thank you so much for tuning in here to today's episode of Locked On Broncos on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. You can subscribe or follow. We encourage you, if you're not done that, do that so you never miss out on what's going on with the team that you love every single day. All year long, you get objective coverage here on the show. Interact with other members of Broncos Country. But Friday's practice will be open to the public. What's the storyline? What happens there? There are going to be a lot of people talking, a lot of things going on. We'll have complete recap of Friday's practice here on Locked On Broncos for all you avid listeners. And we'll also have you covered for Saturday's Back Together weekend. We'll have a post-practice recap for you there as well here. Locked On Broncos, your team every day. Broncos Country. We'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of the show.